Friends, life doesn't become big when money grows. Life becomes big when thinking grows. Most people are not defeated by failure. They are defeated by a small voice inside their head that says, maybe I am not good enough. But tell me, if you think you are ordinary, you will live an ordinary life. If you think you are powerful, your life will slowly rise to meet that belief. So today let's talk about one simple shift. Think as if you are the best. Not to look down on others, but to rise up within yourself. Before the world ever decides who you are, something very important has already happened inside you. A quiet decision has been made, not in a meeting, not on a stage, but in your mind. Because long before people clap for you, criticize you, or completely ignore you, you have already introduced yourself to yourself. And that introduction becomes your first identity. Think about it. When you wake up in the morning, the world doesn't speak to you first. Your thoughts do. They whisper things like, today will be difficult, or I can handle this, or sometimes, I am not ready. And that whisper decides how you walk, how you talk, how you respond, and how you live the entire day. The world only reacts to the version of you that your mind sends forward. Most people believe their identity is their name, their profession, their past, or their circumstances. But your real identity is simpler and deeper. It is the answer to one silent question he has. What do I believe about myself when no one is watching? That belief is not loud, but it is powerful. It shapes your courage. It shapes your patience. It even shapes your fear. You see, the mind is like a mirror. It doesn't show you what is possible, it shows you what you believe. If you believe you are weak, even strength will feel heavy. If you believe you are capable, even challenges will feel meaningful. The same situation, the same resources, the same opportunities, but completely different outcomes simply because the thinking is different. Let me say this very gently. You don't wait for success to think highly of yourself. You think highly of yourself so that success feels natural to you. When you see yourself as someone who deserves growth, effort becomes normal. Discipline becomes easier. And excuses slowly lose their power. Many people are stuck not because life is unfair, but because their inner identity is too small. They have limited themselves with sentences like, this is just how I am, or people like me don't succeed, or I'm not that type of person. These sentences look harmless, but they quietly lock doors from the inside. And the sad part is, no one else even has to stop them. They stop themselves. Your thoughts are not just passing clouds, they are instructions. When you repeatedly tell yourself that you are average, your mind accepts it as a command. It will avoid risks. It will choose comfort over growth. It will protect you from failure. But it will also protect you from greatness. On the other hand, when you start thinking, I am learning, I am improving, I am capable of more, your mind starts looking for evidence to support that belief. This is why two people can face the same failure and walk away differently. One thinks, this proves I am not good enough. The other thinks, this is teaching me something important. Same event, different identity. And because the identity is different, the future becomes different. Your mind believes what you consistently tell it. It does not argue. It does not analyze deeply. It simply obeys. That is why self-talk is not just motivational language. It is identity training. Every time you speak to yourself, you are either building yourself or slowly breaking yourself. And here is the most important realization. You don't need permission to think well of yourself. You don't need a certificate. You don't need applause. Thinking as if you are the best does not mean you are perfect. It means you trust your ability to learn, to grow, and to rise. It means you respect yourself enough to try again. When your inner identity changes, your outer behavior follows quietly. You start sitting differently. You listen more attentively. You speak with clarity, not noise. You stop begging for approval and start offering value. People may not immediately understand what changed, but they will feel it, because confidence that comes from self-belief is calm, not loud. Remember this: the world does not define you first. You define yourself first, and the world adjusts later. So be careful how you think about yourself in silence. That silent thinking is writing your story every single day. Many people misunderstand confidence because they confuse it with arrogance. They see someone standing tall, speaking clearly, believing in themselves, and immediately assume ego is involved. But there is a deep difference between thinking you are the best and thinking you are better than others. One lifts you up, the other pushes people away. One is rooted in self-respect, the other is rooted in insecurity. Arrogance needs comparison to survive. It constantly looks left and right, checking who is behind and who is ahead. It feeds on putting others down because, deep inside, it is afraid of being small. Confidence, on the other hand, is peaceful. It does not need to announce itself. It does not need to win every argument. It simply knows its worth and moves forward quietly. When you think as if you are the best, you are not saying, "I am superior to you." You are saying, "I will not betray my potential." This kind of thinking has nothing to do with ego. In fact, it reduces ego, because when you truly respect yourself, you no longer need to prove yourself to everyone. Arrogance shouts. Confidence listens. Arrogance interrupts. Confidence understands. Arrogance wants attention. Confidence creates impact. You can always feel the difference when someone speaks. One tries to dominate the room. The other naturally fills it with presence. People who lack self-belief often hide behind arrogance. They talk big, but they don't act consistently. They demand respect, but they don't earn trust. Why? Because deep down they are unsure of themselves. So they use loud behavior to cover silent doubt. True confidence does not need covering. It stands comfortably in its own skin. Thinking you are the best also does not mean you stop learning. Arrogant people believe they already know everything. Confident people are curious. They ask questions. They accept feedback. They are not offended by correction because correction does not threaten their identity. Their identity is not fragile. In fact, when you think as if you are the best, humility grows naturally. Because you realize that being the best is not a fixed position. It is a daily practice. You become humble enough to improve and strong enough to admit mistakes. That balance is powerful. Look closely at people you admire deeply. The ones who truly inspire you are rarely arrogant. They are calm, grounded, and respectful. They don't make you feel small, they make you feel capable. That is confidence. It expands the room instead of shrinking it. Arrogance wants to win. Confidence wants to grow. Arrogance reacts emotionally. Confidence responds thoughtfully. When something goes wrong, the arrogant person blames others to protect their image. The confident person looks inward and asks, "What can I do better next time?" That question alone changes everything. Thinking you are the best also changes how you treat people. When you are secure within yourself, you don't compete unnecessarily. You don't feel threatened by someone else's success. In fact, you can celebrate it genuinely, because their growth does not reduce yours. The sky is wide enough for many stars. This mindset also brings patience. Arrogant people want instant recognition. Confident people are willing to wait because they trust the process. They know that real growth takes time. They are not in a rush to impress. They are focused on becoming. Here is something very important. If thinking you are the best makes you disrespect others, you are doing it wrong. True confidence makes you kinder, not colder. It makes you firm, not harsh. You can say no without guilt. You can stand your ground without anger. That is strength with grace. When you stop comparing, you stop competing in unhealthy ways. You begin to collaborate. You begin to contribute. You begin to see people not as rivals, but as fellow travelers. And that shift creates not only success, but peace. So remember, this arrogance inflates the ego, but weakens the soul. Confidence strengthens the soul and keeps the ego in check. Thinking as if you are the best is about honoring your journey, respecting your effort, and committing to your growth without stepping on anyone else along the way. When confidence replaces arrogance, your presence becomes powerful, your actions become consistent, and your character becomes your true identity. Most people spend a large part of their life waiting for approval, waiting for someone to say, yes, you are good enough, waiting for likes, praise, recognition, or permission. And without realizing it, they hand over the remote control of their self-worth to other people. The problem is not that validation feels good. The problem is when validation becomes necessary to feel okay about yourself. When your belief in yourself is weak, validation becomes oxygen. You need it to breathe. If people praise you, you feel confident. If they criticize you, you collapse. If they ignore you, you start questioning your value. Your emotional state keeps changing because it is controlled from the outside. That is a very tiring way to live. But when belief is strong, something beautiful happens. Appreciation feels nice, but its absence does not destroy you. Criticism may hurt, but it does not define you. Silence from others does not make you doubt your existence. You become emotionally stable because your center is inside you, not outside you. Think about this carefully. Validation is temporary. Today people clap, tomorrow they forget. Today they support, tomorrow they move on. If your confidence depends on something so unstable, your life will always feel shaky. That is why strong belief is not about ignoring people, it is about not needing people to tell you who you are. When you truly believe in yourself, you don't announce it. You don't chase applause. You focus on your work. You trust your effort. You let results speak when they are ready. This kind of belief creates quiet confidence. It does not rush. It does not panic. It knows that growth is happening even when no one is watching. Many people stop trying the moment appreciation disappears. They were working for praise, not purpose. But people with strong self-belief continue even in silence. Because they are not performing for an audience, they are building for their future. They don't ask, is anyone noticing me? They ask, am I improving? Strong belief also protects you from emotional exhaustion. When you constantly seek validation, you are always adjusting yourself to please others. You say yes when you want to say no. You hide your true thoughts to fit in. Slowly, you lose touch with yourself. But when belief is strong, you don't abandon yourself for acceptance. You stay honest, you stay aligned. This does not mean you become stubborn or closed-minded. It means you listen without begging. You accept feedback without losing self-respect. You grow without self-hate. There is a big difference between learning from others and depending on others to feel worthy. One of the biggest signs of strong belief is this: you can sit with yourself comfortably. You don't need constant reassurance. You don't need to prove your value in every conversation. You don't feel threatened by disagreement. You know who you are, even when others misunderstand you. And let me tell you something very important. The world often tests you with delay. You may work hard, stay consistent, do everything right, and still not receive recognition immediately. If your belief is weak, you will quit early. You will think something is wrong with you. But if your belief is strong, you will understand that timing is part of the journey, not a judgment of your worth. Strong belief also changes how you react to criticism. When someone criticizes you and your belief is weak, you hear, "You are not enough." When belief is strong, you hear, "There is something I can improve." The message is filtered differently because your identity is not fragile. People with strong belief don't fight every opinion. They don't defend themselves unnecessarily. They don't explain their dreams to everyone. Not because they are arrogant, but because they are secure. They know that not everyone needs to understand their path. Validation is like sugar. A little feels good. Too much makes you dependent. Strong belief is like nutrition. It builds you slowly, deeply, and permanently. When belief is strong, you stop outsourcing your self-worth. You take responsibility for it. And the most powerful part is this. When you stop needing validation, you actually attract respect. People trust those who are grounded. They feel safe around those who are not desperate for approval. Confidence without dependence is magnetic. So remember, belief is the foundation. Validation is optional. Build your belief so strong that praise becomes a bonus, not a requirement. When you know your value, you don't need the world to confirm it every day. You walk forward with calm strength, knowing that even if no one claps today, you are still becoming who you are meant to be. The human mind is always listening. Even when you think it is distracted, even when you think it is tired, even when you think it is not paying attention, it is listening. Every word you repeat to yourself, every sentence you casually say in your head, every label you place on yourself, your mind absorbs it without questioning. It does not ask whether the words are true or fair. It simply accepts them and starts working according to those instructions. That is why repetition is so powerful. Not because it is magical, but because it is consistent. The mind is shaped less by big emotional moments and more by small daily messages. What you repeat becomes familiar. What becomes familiar starts feeling true. And what feels true slowly becomes your reality. If you repeatedly tell yourself, "I am not good at this," your mind does not argue. It begins to avoid effort in that area. It lowers your expectations. It reduces your courage. Over time, that repeated sentence turns into a belief, and that belief turns into behavior. You didn't fail because you lacked ability. You failed because you trained your mind to expect failure. On the other hand, when you repeatedly tell yourself, "I am learning," something different happens. The mind stays open. Mistakes feel less personal. Effort feels worthwhile. Progress becomes visible. The words are simple, but their repetition builds resilience. The mind does not need dramatic affirmations. It needs believable ones repeated with patience. Repetition works whether you are aware of it or not. That is the danger and the opportunity. Many people unknowingly repeat negative thoughts for years. "I'm unlucky. Nothing ever works for me. I always mess things up." These sentences become mental habits. And just like physical habits, mental habits shape posture, energy, and direction. Think about how habits are formed. You don't become fit by exercising once. You don't become unhealthy by eating one bad meal. It is repetition that decides the outcome. The same rule applies to thinking. One negative thought does not ruin you, but repeated negative thinking builds an identity that is hard to escape. Your mind is not designed to motivate you, it is designed to protect you. So when you repeat fearful or limiting thoughts, the mind tries to keep you safe by avoiding risk. It will choose comfort over challenge. It will prefer familiarity over growth. And slowly, your life becomes smaller, not because of lack of potential, but because of repeated internal warnings. But here is the hopeful part. The same system that learns limitation can learn confidence. The same mind that absorbed doubt can absorb belief. The key is repetition with intention. You don't need to lie to yourself. You need to speak to yourself with honesty and encouragement. Instead of saying, I am the best, start with, I am becoming better. Instead of saying, I can't do this, say, I haven't learned this yet. These small shifts may seem insignificant, but repeated daily, they reshape how your mind responds to challenges. Repetition also creates emotional familiarity. When you repeatedly think negatively, anxiety feels normal. When you repeatedly think positively, calm becomes familiar. Your emotional baseline changes. You react less. You respond more. You don't panic at small setbacks because your mind has been trained to expect progress, not perfection. People often wait for motivation to change their thinking. But motivation is unreliable. Repetition does not need motivation. It needs discipline. You don't wait to feel confident before speaking kindly to yourself. You speak kindly until confidence grows naturally. And remember, your mind believes the most repeated voice. If you constantly replay other people's criticism, in your head, their voice becomes louder than your own. But when you consciously repeat your own supportive thoughts, you take back control. You become the primary influence in your life. This is why the environment you choose matters. The content you consume, the conversations you engage in, the words you hear daily, all of it contributes to repetition. Your mind is always learning patterns. Choose patterns that build you, not break you. Repetition also requires patience. You cannot undo years of self-doubt in a few days. But every positive repetition weakens the old pattern and strengthens the new one. Slowly, the inner dialogue changes. The tone becomes kinder. The expectations become higher. The fear becomes manageable. And one day, without realizing it, you will respond differently to challenges. You will try instead of retreat. You will speak instead of staying silent. You will believe instead of doubting. Not because of one big moment, but because of many small repeated thoughts that quietly rewired your mind. So be mindful of what you repeat. Your mind is always listening. Train it carefully. Speak to it wisely. Because the words you repeat today are shaping the life you will live tomorrow. One of the biggest misunderstandings people have about confidence is that it comes after success. They believe, when I get results, then I'll believe in myself. When things start working out, then I'll act confidently. But life rarely works that way. Confidence is not a reward you receive at the end of the journey. It is a decision you make at the beginning. Great people do not wait for evidence before they trust themselves. They move first. They act first. They show up with belief even when nothing around them proves they should. And this is not because they are foolish or unrealistic. It is because they understand something very deep about human behavior. Results follow identity, not the other way around. If you wait for results to appear before acting confident, you may wait forever. Because results require action, and action requires belief. Someone has to break the cycle. Great people break it by choosing confidence before certainty. Think about it. Every meaningful achievement in the world began with uncertainty. No one starts knowing how everything will turn out. No one has full clarity. No one has guarantees. If confidence required guarantees, no one would ever begin anything new. The people who move forward are not the ones who feel fearless. They are the ones who act despite fear. Acting confident does not mean pretending everything is perfect. It means trusting your ability to handle whatever comes next. It means saying, I may not have all the answers, but I believe I can learn. That belief changes how you carry yourself. Your posture changes. Your voice changes. Your decisions become bolder. When you act confident before results appear, you send a powerful message to your own mind. You tell it, we are capable. And the mind responds by looking for ways to support that belief. It becomes more focused, more alert, more creative. Confidence sharpens attention, doubt scatters it. Many people stay stuck because they want confidence to arrive fully formed. They want to feel ready. They want to feel sure. But readiness is a feeling that comes from movement, not from waiting. You don't feel confident and then act. You act, and confidence slowly catches up. Great people understand that the first steps are always shaky. The early days are awkward. The initial attempts are imperfect. But they don't interpret that as a sign to stop. They interpret it as part of the process. They normalize discomfort instead of running from it. Look closely at people who have achieved something meaningful. At some point, they had to walk into a room where they didn't fully belong yet. They had to speak before they felt ready. They had to try before they felt qualified. If they had waited to feel confident, their potential would have remained unused. Acting confident before results also builds credibility over time. When you show consistency, when you keep going even without applause, people begin to trust you. Not because you boast, but because you persist. Confidence without results at first looks risky. Confidence with consistency eventually looks like leadership. This kind of confidence is quiet. It does not brag. It does not rush to explain itself. It shows up again and again. And slowly, results begin to form, not magically but logically. Because confident action creates experience. Experience creates skill. Skill creates results. There is also something very important here. Acting confident does not mean ignoring feedback. Great people adjust. They learn, they refine. But they do not let temporary failure destroy their belief. They separate performance from identity. A bad outcome does not mean they are bad. It means something needs improvement. When you act confident before results appear, you also build emotional strength. You become familiar with uncertainty. You stop panicking when things are unclear. You learn to trust yourself in unknown territory. That ability alone is a major advantage in life. Most people want certainty before commitment. Great people commit and create certainty along the way. That is why their growth looks faster. Not because life is easier for them, but because they don't pause every time doubt appears. Confidence before results is also an act of self-respect. It says, I believe my effort matters, even if the outcome is not guaranteed. That belief keeps you moving on difficult days. It keeps you disciplined when motivation fades. It keeps you aligned with your long-term vision. And over time, something interesting happens. The confidence that once felt like a choice becomes natural. You no longer have to force it. It becomes part of how you think, speak, and act. Results start appearing not as a surprise, but as a confirmation of what you already believed. So remember this, waiting for results before acting confident is like waiting for light before turning on the switch. Confidence is the switch. Results are the light. Great people understand this simple truth. They choose belief first, action next, and let results follow in their own time. When you were a child, you did not wake up thinking about limits. You did not calculate your chances before trying something new. You did not say, "What if I fail?" before taking your first steps or speaking your first words. You tried, you fell, you laughed, and you tried again. Confidence was not something you learned, it was something you naturally had. Self-doubt came later, slowly, quietly. It was not born with you, it was taught to you, sometimes by words, sometimes by reactions, sometimes by silence. Think about it carefully. A child draws something and proudly shows it to an adult. If the response is encouragement, confidence grows. If the response is criticism or comparison, doubt takes root. Over time, the child learns to hesitate, not because ability disappeared, but because belief was interrupted. Self-doubt is a learned habit. It comes from repeated messages like, "Be careful," "Don't make mistakes," "What will people say?" These messages may come from care, but they train fear. The mind starts associating mistakes with danger. And once that association is formed, confidence begins to shrink. As children, we were praised for effort. As adults, we are judged by outcomes. Somewhere in between, we stop trusting the process and start fearing the result. We stop asking, "What can I learn?" and start asking, "What if I look foolish?" That shift creates self-doubt. You see, self-doubt is not proof of weakness. It is proof of conditioning. It is a learned response to past experiences. That means it can also be unlearned. But first, we must stop treating self-doubt as our true nature. It is not who you are. It is something you picked up along the way. Many people believe confident individuals are simply born different. But that is not true. Confident people have simply learned to question their doubt instead of obeying it. They feel the same fear. They hear the same inner voice. But they don't treat it as a command. They treat it as noise. Self-doubt often sounds logical. It says things like, "This is risky," "You're not ready," "Others are better." And because it sounds reasonable, we accept it. But logic without courage leads to stagnation. Growth has always required a little discomfort. Children learn by trying. Adults avoid trying to avoid embarrassment. That is the difference. Somewhere along the way, we started protecting our image instead of expanding our ability. And self-doubt became the guard standing at the door of our potential. But remember, what is learned can be unlearned. The same way doubt was built through repetition, confidence can be rebuilt through practice. Not by forcing positivity, but by changing your relationship with fear. Instead of asking, "What if I fail?" ask, "What if I learn?" Instead of saying, "I can't do this," say, "I can try." These small changes weaken the old pattern. Over time, the mind relearns safety in effort. Reconnecting with your natural confidence does not mean becoming careless. It means becoming curious again. Children are confident because they are curious. They are more interested in discovery than judgment. When you bring curiosity back into your life, confidence follows naturally. Self-doubt also grows stronger in silence. When you keep your fears unspoken, they feel bigger. When you acknowledge them, they lose power. Confidence is not the absence of fear, it is the willingness to move with fear present. Another important truth is this: self-doubt often increases as responsibility increases. When more is at stake, fear grows louder. But that does not mean you are less capable. It means you care. The mistake is believing that caring means you should stop. You don't overcome self-doubt by eliminating it. You overcome it by acting despite it. Each time you act while doubting, you weaken doubt's authority. You show your mind that fear does not equal danger. Slowly, trust returns. And one day, you realize something powerful. The confidence you are trying to build is not new. It is familiar. It feels like remembering something you once had. because deep inside you know this is true. You were born believing you could grow. You were born believing effort mattered. Self-doubt was learned. Confidence was natural. And what is natural can be reclaimed. You don't need to become someone else. You don't need to add anything extra. You simply need to remove the layers of fear you learned over time. Beneath them, confidence is already there, quiet, patient, waiting for you to trust it again. When you begin to think of yourself as capable, responsible, and worthy of growth, something subtle but powerful changes inside you. Your actions start demanding more from you. Laziness becomes uncomfortable. Excuses start feeling dishonest. You no longer need someone standing over your head to push you because your own self-image begins to do that work. When you think small, life feels casual. You delay things. You say, I'll do it tomorrow. You negotiate with your discipline. But when you think big, when you see yourself as someone who is meant to rise, your standards automatically increase. You stop asking, can I skip this? And start asking, what is required of me? This is the hidden power of thinking as if you are the best. It doesn't make you relaxed. It makes you responsible. When you respect yourself, you don't waste your own time. You don't sabotage your own progress. You become careful about how you spend your energy, who you listen to, and what habits you allow into your life. Not because someone forced you, but because you don't want to disappoint the version of yourself you believe in. High self-belief creates inner accountability. You start feeling answerable to your own potential. You may still feel tired, distracted, or unmotivated at times, but you no longer allow those feelings to control your decisions completely. You understand that emotions come and go, but responsibility remains. Think about this deeply. When you believe you are meant for more, average behavior starts feeling heavy. Procrastination starts bothering you, not in a guilty way, but in a waking up way. You begin to sense that every careless choice is moving you away from who you could become. This is why people with strong self-belief often appear disciplined. It is not because they enjoy effort more. It is because they cannot tolerate betraying themselves. Their self-image simply does not allow them to stay careless for long. When you see yourself as capable, excuses sound weak even to your own ears. You still hear them, but you don't fully believe them anymore. You know when you are lying to yourself. And that awareness alone changes behavior. Thinking big also changes how you prepare. You don't show up half ready. You don't rely on luck. You understand that confidence without preparation is fragile. So you prepare not out of fear, but out of respect. You take responsibility for your growth. Responsibility is not pressure when it comes from belief. It becomes purpose. You don't feel forced to work, you feel committed. You don't feel controlled, you feel aligned. People who think small often wait for someone else to fix things. People who think big ask, what can I do? That question is the doorway to responsibility. It shifts power back into your hands. This mindset also makes you honest with yourself. When you think highly of yourself, you stop pretending. You stop hiding behind excuses like, I didn't have time, or it wasn't my fault. You take ownership not because you enjoy blame, but because ownership gives you control. There is also something important here. Thinking big does not mean being harsh on yourself. It means being fair. You don't punish yourself for mistakes, but you don't ignore them either. You learn, you adjust, you move forward. When your self-image grows, your tolerance for mediocrity shrinks. You start noticing when you are underperforming, and instead of defending it, you correct it. That is maturity. That is responsibility. This is why real confidence often looks quiet, It is busy working. It is focused on doing what needs to be done. It does not waste energy complaining or blaming. It understands that every action is a vote for the person you are becoming. Thinking as if you are the best also makes you reliable to yourself and to others. You keep your word more often. You follow through. You understand that trust is built through consistency, not intention. And because you see yourself as someone of value, you act like it. Responsibility also shows up in how you handle setbacks. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" you ask, "What is this teaching me?" That question keeps you moving forward. It keeps you growing instead of breaking. When you think big, you stop running from responsibility. You realize responsibility is not a burden. It is proof that you are capable of handling more. And the more responsibly you act, the stronger your belief becomes. It is a cycle that lifts you upward. So remember this: thinking as if you are the best does not make life easier. It makes you stronger. It raises your standards. It sharpens your discipline. It forces you to show up even when you don't feel like it. And that is the real transformation. When belief turns into responsibility, growth becomes inevitable.